Hello, today I want to look at foiling using embossing folders as the foiling template or the hot foil stamp. So this is kind of where I've ended up today, but it's been an interesting journey because embossing folders vary so much. So let me show you what I've investigated, what I've tried, what I've failed at, and then we'll see how I actually got this result, which I'm actually quite pleased with. And the other thing that's come up, and I mentioned in a previous video, was people go, okay, but how do you get from that to a finished card? So I'm also going to look at a card I've been working on over the last few days. I haven't actually put it together yet, and I've got all the bits that I've cut things out from and done, and I'll go through that process as well. And this example, I think I would probably mount this behind an aperture, so the bits of the foiling are peeping out into the framed area, and I can add some foliage coming over the top, and yeah, so I'll maybe make a follow-up video on what I actually do with that. Okay, I've got lots of ideas, but I can take a day to make a card or two. So that's too long a time to spend on a video. So let's see where I've been. Oh, and the other thing is that this works much better and much more easily on coated paper or coated card than it does on uncoated. So this was my other experiment using the same embossing folder today. One side came out better than the other. So when I did this one, I taped everything down within an inch of its life, and actually sort of did this twice so I could actually move it on my GoPress to get the pressure right in all the places I needed. So that's on my plain white smooth card, my 250 GSM smooth white card that I use for just about everything. Okay, so let's see what I've been up to. Oh yeah, embossing folders. I have a selection here. So this is one that I've been working with, and I like to produce a result that's pressed into the card in the same way as a hot foil stamp would press into the card. Other people do it by embossing and then foiling on the raised area, and it's much easier to get a good result on that, but it's not the look I was going for. This is on coated paper again, and that's using this embossing folder. Now, got lots of different manufacturers' embossing folders, and this one's got really fine raised lines on it, and that style of embossing folder is going to give you the best results. Okay, and again, this one has really fine raised lines, so that means you get a concentrated pressure onto the foil, and that gives good results. Let me find some examples. I've buried all my examples here. I had more. I did have more. I know I had more. I got them under here. Bear with me a moment. They were buried on my table. So this embossing folder, I've managed to get this lovely result from. Okay, you can see it's not raised, it's pressed into the card and on coated paper, and even in my red foil that's not quite so easy to foil with. Now, as I say, embossing folders, just about every manufacturer seems to use a different specification. So they come in, some are very rigid. This is actually a Todo brand one from Create and Craft. Their cherry blossom design. It's got nice firm, it's more rigid, they're firm, it's quite a stiff folder, and I've got some really nice results from that. But one of the problems you have, because they're flexible, where you've got big open areas, you tend to get overfoiling, because the bit where there isn't any pattern gets pressed down onto the card. So what I've done is emboss a piece of card and then cut around the embossing to produce a mask, and I'll show you how I use those in a short while. So that's that one. So that was its result. And there are various techniques. If you search on YouTube for foiling using embossing folders, there are lots of methods out there. Now, one lady, I think is it Christina Designs or something, does a method where she also doesn't emboss the card first, but she uses the embossing folder with the ridges up, heats it up and puts the card on top. And I got that quite lovely result. And there's another one down here. You can see I've been doing lots and lots of playing, lots and lots and lots of experimenting. Using that method, I got that really lovely result, but then I couldn't at all get it to work properly on my uncoated card. So that doesn't work for the way that I tend to use my foiling, because I like to then apply inks and those kinds of things, so that wasn't going to work for me. So I've also found differences if I'm using paper. This is a from a Paper Boutique paper pad, and I failed to start with. I then actually checked out whether or not the paper would actually take foil, because I was having so much trouble foiling onto it. So I then used a hot foil stamp and put some foil over the top, and that had no trouble at all. So I persevered, and what I discovered is that when I'm using paper rather than card, I need a card shim underneath the paper, so that the embossing folder's got something to press into a little bit, so there's something they're giving just underneath. So, success. Yeah, so that was with my card, with the heating the embossing folder from underneath and putting that on top of the foil, and that was a slightly better result I've got doing it the way I normally do it. So let me show you what I do, and then we can talk about what I do with it, and we can see what results we get. So let's have an embossing folder. Now, one of the ones I've been experimenting with is this one, and there's a recent Tonic sort of box collection magazine. That's this one. Try and get it where the camera can see it. And it came with this gorgeous die set, an embossing folder and some stamps. I haven't used the stamps, but I have made a card using that, and that is this card here. Well, I say I've made a card. I've made the bits to make a card at the moment. Let me sort this out. So, card base. See, none of it is put together yet. So I have a card base, and I have a piece of pattern paper which is stuck on the back of my die cut, and I've die cut the panel at both ends. Okay, and that will go on there. And then there's edger dies and all sorts in this set. It's really versatile. So then that will go on there. And then I've made a panel and I've foiled the edge of it using my foiling the edges of toppers method. There's a couple of videos on how to do that. But this is a large die that I've used for this. It's a Spellbinders die. I hold it up there, try and hold it still. You can see its cutting edge is in the middle of a nice wide piece that it sits on, and it's this bit that it sits on that actually creates the foiling. So you foil a piece like that using the back of the cutting die as your hot foil stamp, and then you die cut it. And if you were really brave about getting things in the right place, or you wanted to use an even bigger die to cut it out, you can actually have the forward edge of an aperture using that technique. So I've cut my mat and I've used the embossing folder to foil some of the same paper that I've used in the background, and that will go on there, and that will go on there, that will go on there. And then I couldn't make up my mind what I was doing with my sentiment, so I've got that version which could go across there, or I've got that version because this hot foil stamp comes with a die that cuts perfectly around it, so I could use that version. And then I have flowers because there are flower dies in the set, so I made up my flowers, I put them in a pot, and these will, I'm not going to be able to tip this up to show you because everything will fall off, so you get the idea. The flowers will go on, and what I'll do is while the video is uploading, I'll stick the card down, and then when it's uploaded I'll make it the thumbnail for this video, so you will be able to see exactly how the card turns out when all the foam's there to lift things up and give them dimension and everything's stuck down. But yeah, I've made up all my flowers, lots and lots of flowers. And what I did, yes, important step. What I did was I used the embossing folder and I foiled some white card. I did it twice. And then I've used the dies, the flower dies in the set, because these are a separate piece, you can use them separately, to cut out from the embossing folders. Now, the embossing way I use the embossing folder actually produces the flower back to front. So the outline isn't exactly where it needs to be, but I kind of like that slightly haphazard look. You know, things are too neat. Sometimes it just doesn't, it looks too contrived. So I've left them being slightly, I'll show you a flower close up. You can see that the foiling's not in quite the right places, but actually when the flowers are made up, you just get sort of those odd hints of foiling down the edges of some of the petals, one side or the other, or sometimes just at the end. Another one. And I thought, well, I was making the card and I thought, is this going to work? So I thought, there's only one way to find out, and that's cut out the flowers, make them up and see if they look nice. And I like them. So that's how that's going to work. So let's move that to one side. So let's show you how to do this foiling with the embossing folder. So that's what I used to create those and the centre panel in my topper. Oh, well that's another piece. That's how the embossing folder looks when it's foiled, because that was going to be a piece for my topper, but I foiled it on the wrong side. Oh, and that was my first attempt at doing the foiling for the topper, and I was going to go with that. I thought it was a bit shabby chic, but yeah, that'll be okay. And then I actually did the foiling to make the flowers and got a much better result and thought, okay, let's try again. So yeah, you can see I've done this a few times. So I'm just going to pop my flowers back in their box so they don't get lost. Right, so I need a piece of card. I'm going to do this in silver because I've got lots of silver foil. So piece of card, and I'm working on, I don't know where everybody that watches is from. In the UK this is A6. If you're in America, your normal big piece of paper would be a US letter size, and this is approximately a quarter of that size. So if you cut that into 4, this is the kind of size piece of card I'm working with. It's about 10 by 15, just under. You know, it might be 9 by 14. It's those kinds of dimensions. It happens to match the embossing folder, which I think is 10 centimetres wide. My card's 10.5. Okay, so foil. Oh, my GoPress was at temperature, but it's gone to sleep while I've been talking. So I need to make sure I'm using the side with the ridges on. Now sometimes on embossing folders that's the coloured side, sometimes it's the plain side. As I say, they're all different. Okay, but if I fill this, I can feel the ridges on the edge of the flowers are there. So that's what I do, and I want my foil up against those lumps and bumps. And I use the embossing folder open, so that goes there. Now I know, yeah, I did leave my tape where I could find it, and to make it easier when I'm moving things around, I'm going to put a piece of tape at the end there just to hold things still, and then I'm going to show you how I've got my GoPress set up. So in the course of my experiments, I've got a card shim in there, I don't need that for this, let's pop that down there. In the course of my experiments, I discovered that I seem to get more pressure on one side of my GoPress than the other. Now I don't think it's likely to be the GoPress that's fault, I think that's probably my die cutting machine gives me more pressure down one side than the other. So to compensate, I found that if I actually have, that's all, a thin strip of 250 GSM card down there, and then I've got a piece of 5x7, so it fits inside the grey area, piece of 300 GSM card that I always use, or nearly always use with my metal shim, and then I've got my thin metal shim, which is my 0.3mm thin metal shim. Okay, it's not the Couture Creations conversion plate, which is much thicker. It's a very thin metal shim. It's the sort of thing you buy for using with die cutting machines if you're to help with cutting intricate dies or cutting fabric. So it's a thin one. I'll put some details in the video description where you might be able to get one. Okay, so that's my GoPress. Okay, and I'm going to put my embossing folder on here and then leave this to warm up. My foil's moved. Get the foil back in the right place. I find the foil sort of has a static attraction to the embossing folder. Sometimes it's easier to put the foil on the embossing folder then put everything else on afterwards. That's it. Okay. And that goes there, and I close the lid. Okay, and I'm going to put that back on here to warm up. Now that needs to really well warm up. So when the light goes green, I'm just going to leave it there until it goes back to flashing red and then comes back to green again. That seems to be what works. Okay, so while we're waiting for that, I talked earlier about making a mask so you don't get over foiling. So this embossing folder, which has this lovely swirly pattern around the edge, it's one of my favourites. It's not very rigid though, so I've had huge problems with getting over foiling, and I've tried sort of cutting masks just sort of by eye, and then I thought, if I actually emboss with it and then cut around my embossing, I'll have a mask the right shape. So that's what I've done. So this will want to go in between, get it the right way up, in between my try and think, have I done this the right way? In between my card and my embossing. And I think, oh yes, I did it in that corner. That's what I did. So I've put the card in that corner. Okay, so that I just will cut this bit away and use this bit as a mask. And then I keep the masks in the embossing folders. So I'm going to cut around here. And because I can see exactly where the detail of the embossing folder is, I can make this quite a tight mask with quite a lot of detail. Doesn't matter whether I cut from the front or the back, so if it's easy to cut from the back, that's fine. Okay, so this is just the bit I want. This is waste. So then, when I put my card in, I'll put that in between the card and the foil. Now I've got one I was using earlier in that way. Is that gone? That's just gone back to green, I think. So we'll leave it a bit longer. I showed you this example. So that was done using this embossing folder. Now, I've no idea what make this is. It came in the magazine. To be honest, I hadn't used it until today, and I thought, oh, I could do with something to go round the edge of Wildcat. So there we are. So I've used that. So what I did was I put that down over the top of the area I made sure I didn't want any foil on, and then I put my foil on and put that over the top. And as you can see, if I can ever get it to come away from here, it's got quite a lot of foil in it. All that foil would have ended up over the face of my pussycat. So I'm really glad I've got that, and I'm just going to keep that, as I say, in the embossing folder, and then it's there whenever I want to use that. So that's gone green again, so I'm going to go and run that through my die cutting machine. Okay, so I haven't looked yet, so let's see what we've got. Open the lid. And you can see it's pressed into the foil, the same way you get when you use a hot foil stamp. Now the embossing folder is quite warm, so I find the best thing to do is stick them under something that's going to help them flatten out. So I've just got a table mat there. I'm just going to pop that under there for now. And the GoPress back on the base so that it stays warm. Carefully peel my tape because the tape does get stickier when it gets warm and has pressure on it. Okay, the big reveal. Try and find an edge of the foil. There we are. So, as you see, it's better in some places than others. It's very rare you get perfect results from embossing folders, as I say, because they flex and they're not a precision thing. But that's quite good. If you were to die cut a flower arrangement and put it over that and a sentiment, that would look like a really nice background. I've got a faint spot, so I might have to see what's happening with my pressure there, but that's the method. Okay, so let's see what we can do with that. Let's try out some other materials. So let's take this, and I've got here some pages from a Hunkydory little book. Got a few. Okay, and this one this is artwork by Pollyanna Pickering, and this is from one of her decoupage pads. So this is the same kind of paper as you get in the Hunkydory little books. It's a coated paper. So let's see what we can do. So I was wondering about you have to kind of figure out where bits and pieces are going to come. So I just maybe want some swirls going around the edge of that. So about there. Okay. So I could either go onto the back and tape my page and my mask together at the edges. That might be an idea if I do that. I've figured out where they line up. Okay, so I'm just going to put a piece of tape there. So I'm just going to take that down there. Small piece there. Oops. And the whole thing across there so it can't move. Okay, so I've just taped that in one place so I can flip it back, and I've done it on the wrong side of the embossing folder. That's a good start, isn't it? I want the lumpy side. This means my mask is the wrong way around. So I'll take this apart. Okay, so my mask will want to go that way up. Just check where that's going to come. And that will come down the other side of there. Come up a bit. Okay, if I use that like that. My tape in the way there. Yeah. Okay, so that's that. But I need my foil in there. If you're just experimenting to see, you know, whether or not you can get it to work at all, you can try it without the mask, but you will get overfoiling. Okay, I think that's enough foil. So that's going to go over there. Maybe I'll cut that a bit short. Let's have a look. Yep, cut the foil too short. But I'll use that in a minute. That won't go to waste. Okay. Right, so that needs to go. So I've just turned it around and checked and made sure that my mask is where it needs to be. And if I press, I can see where the edge of the mask is and make sure it's not going to get in the way of the foil, but going actually where I want it. So that's that. So I'm going to put that on to the GoPress. Let me pull the GoPress over and do it. And then while we're waiting for it to warm up, we can get some, I can look at some other examples and talk about what I do with these. Oops, so. Right, so that's gone into there. I'm going to move it down a bit. Close the lid. That's it. Okay. Now if you just squeeze the end of the lid together when you pick it up, then nothing can move. Okay, and then when you push it in, reach underneath the embossing folder or just at the edges to push it in. If you try and push sort of the lid or the embossing folder, everything's going to move. So that's warming up. So what else did I have in my pile of examples? Okay, so refoiled. Okay, so you foiled, great. Then what do you do with it? Okay, so we have blended ink backgrounds. Okay, the foiling's a bit shabby on that, but yeah, foiling worked better on that. Okay, and I've just used some ink and a blending tool for that, and I would imagine I would eventually die cut that, mat it and layer it, put some 3D flowers on it and a sentiment, yeah, in the middle of my card, or in one corner, depending on the size and shape of your card. Okay, lots of, now I tried doing this onto foil card. This is the best result I got on foil card. It was really difficult to get it to heat up enough to take the foil. And I think this was done doing the technique where you heat up the embossing folder and then you lay your card on top and do it that way. But that was quite difficult to do. And this was done pressing down into it and I got even less. Yeah, several. I even got to the stage I went back to using hot foil plates just to make sure the machine was working. So, and I've got two different sorts of cardstock, and some of it is a crafter's companion card, and that seemed less happy about taking foil. than other silver card I've got. It might have been me on the day, but that seems to be a challenge. Right, so that's been sitting there warming up, and I don't know how many times my light's gone green while I've been talking. That feels good and hot, so I'm going to go and run that through the die cutting machine, and then we'll see what I've got there. Okay, so I've actually run this through twice now, because I did it the first time, and yes, the results were lovely, and I came back to show you, and I thought I was showing you, and I hadn't pressed record, so I've turned it all around and done it again. So, and this time I put the card shim onto the GoPress. So let me move that out of the way, and you can see what we've got. And then I will go back and talk about all the other things I talked about without actually recording. Carefully taking the tape off. There we are. So the first bit of foiling was done round the top edge. The second time I've done it round the bottom. So I've given myself a swirly frame. So I would possibly die cut that, or just trim it, mat it, layer it, and again I'll try and make up a card in the next few days, and then I'll do a video going through all the examples. But yeah, I'm really happy with how that's turned out. So Hunkydory little books is what I've used to do that on. Okay, and oh, my mask, because you won't have seen that because I didn't press record, that's all the foiling that's ended up on my masks. That would have been all over the middle of my sentiment. There we go. So I shall keep the mask with my embossing folder. Here are the foil. So there we go. That can sit there. Close up the embossing folder. Okay, and I'm going to put it somewhere flat and get the other one that I used earlier out. See, that one now sits flat. That's fine. That one under there, so it's pressed flat, and that will be fine. So that's great. Now, somewhere here, maybe under here, I've got my jungle pattern. So one of the other things people have asked me about is I've mentioned using glycerin for ink blending, and how do I use it and what's that all about. So let me show you. Just bear with me a minute while I just get a few bits and pieces together. Okay, so I have here some foam blending pads go on these little blending tools. So these are great. If you haven't got one of these, piece of makeup sponge do fine. I've even seen people use sort of dried out baby wipes and all kinds of stuff for just applying ink. You know, it's whatever you've got and find easy to use. Okay, and here I've got these are from Hobbycraft, and they're cheap own brand pigment ink pads. They're little mini ones, and this came as a box of however many these are, I think for £5. So yeah, this is not expensive stuff. So these are a pigment ink, and they tend to give you quite a a relatively subtle effect. And then in this bottle I have some glycerin. Now glycerin is used as a cooking ingredient. You use it in royal icing to stop it from setting hard, and it just kind of keeps things a bit wetter and a bit slipperier. So you can buy it in small bottles, usually from sort of cake decorating aisles in supermarkets, or you can go to a chemist shop and buy a really big bottle for just a couple of pounds. And then I've just decanted some into this fine tip bottle just to make it easier, or you can just use a pipette to get some out of your bottle. You don't need very much. So I'm just going to use a couple of drops on my glass mat. Okay, and I've got a couple of ink blending tools there, and I'm just going to work one spot into each one. So there we are, just pick it up off the mat on each one. So you're almost sort of cleaning your mat with the blending tool, makes them quite slippery. And then I'm going to take some ink and just press that onto my glass mat. So that's blue, quite a turquoisey blue. Actually, if I add to that some, here's my purple, some purple, that will make that a nice dark blue for me. I'm just pressing the ink pad onto the glass. Make sure I haven't obscured my camera. There we are, and then I'm also going to do some green. So that's some inks. And then I'm going to, just to keep my mat clean. Now I've got here a piece of release paper, but you can just use a piece of copy paper. But this is sort of slippery around the edges. Address labels are on this. Okay, so if you know anybody who works in an office, or you work in an office and they throw the backing sheet away, so you can get them to keep them for you. Okay, so then I can just come in from the edge. Move that out of the way. Yeah. And it glides in quite nicely. Okay. And then if I take some green down the bottom. Now that's not a very strong green, so sometimes you want some stronger colour. So, two ink pads, that's quite subtle. Now the other thing you can do is you can also use water-based colouring pens. These are just standard. They're a water-based dye ink in these. I'm going to take the dark green from this. Actually, I'm just going to clean my mat. Right, so I've just cleaned that area of my mat, and I am just going to scribble with a pen on my mat. And it doesn't even have to be just one colour, it can be a mixture of. There are a couple of different greens, and then I'm just going to pick that up on the same ink pad. Kind of blended the two together, and then I'm going to use that on my card. And if I need some more, and you do tend to get a stronger colour from the pens. Than you do from the pigment inks for some of the colours. And you might not have stamping inks, but you might have colouring pens. So not alcohol based, water based. So there we are. So I've got the sky at the top, the greenery below, and I can blend the two together. Yeah, if I want to take my sky down into my greenery, I can do that. Make it a nice gentle blend, a nice ombre effect. Around that edge. Okay, so that's the technique I used on my cherry blossom sample, which is here somewhere. Embossing folder and another embossing folder. So there we are, that's the technique I've used on there and on there. Okay, and the better your foiling is, the better it looks, because then the foiling acts as a resist and you get plenty of definition. Okay, so let me think if there's anything I haven't shown you. So we've done foiling onto plain